Time now for St. Helens Town Talk Cafe with Steve Toski. The opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of KOHI Radio, staff, or advertisers. Now, here's Steve.
I thought we were lighting it on fire.
So we can light that on fire. Just throw some cinnamon on there while it's lit. Makes it smell really good.
And, okay.
Serving up the chaos.
That's our new drink. And the reason why we are serving that new drink up as a special is today is the official launch of our news program here on the Town Talk Cafe.
Nice.
I know. And so those chaos drinks are flying out the door.
Mm-hmm. Just causing chaos.
And I thought it would be appropriate for a news segment on this show, and that we are a cafe that, chaos is the order of the day. And those lyrics are very meaningful in our embattled town of St. Helens, or here peaceful by the sea, or peaceful by the river. And fortunately, let's go into our soundproof booth now. Head in there, and it's not too late to call in at 5033971600, and we have the artist that has created that tune. Chaos Equals Order. Scott Jorgensen. Scott, thanks so much for coming into the cafe.
This was really a life moment for me. I'm really, really glad you were able to do that, because since I was a kid, 10 or so, hearing Guns N' Roses on the radio for the first time, said, man, that would be cool to be able to do that someday, to start a band and make an album and have a song played on the radio. I waited my whole life for that.
Are you saying that this music, this is going to be our bumper music for our new show? When we kick off our new show, at the last portion of our show every day, we're going to be playing Chaos is the Order of the Day, and you're saying that this is some kind of dream come true for you?
Oh, hugely, yeah. In fact, I used to do radio down in Grants Pass. I was news director at their stations there, and that was one of my favorite parts, was getting bumper music. So I'd take, the producer was a good friend of mine, and we'd take some of our favorite songs and say, okay, let's take the first 30 seconds of this, and that'll be the bumper music. And now, all these years later, a song that I wrote 10 years ago gets to be the bumper music for a local radio show, and I'm thrilled. You made my day, you made my year. It's been a rough year,
awesome.
Right? So this makes it all worthwhile. I would say, what did you do in 2023? Well, I got to cuddle my kids quite a bit, my little girls, watch them grow up. That's been the highlight, but also, a big accomplishment, got one of my silly songs on the radio.
I think it's an awesome song, and I love the energy of it. So, Kimmy, we are making dreams come true. We made a dream today here in St. Helens. That's a motto of our town, where dreams come true. So we're going to break the tape, spike the football on 2023.
Please, the sooner the better.
We're gonna go out though with now. So I do want to ask a few questions, because normally we start off here on the radio show meeting our neighbors. And so, Scott, where do you live nowadays? Are you a Pac Northwest guy, or where are you at?
I'm actually a Longview resident.
That's Pac Northwest.
Sure. Well, I used to commute from Lake Oswego, and the whole time I was looking for a place around here. Right? There was just nothing. affordability, availability, just nothing. And so I said, okay, fine, I'll look in Washington. And ended up getting a place in Ridgefield, and then bought a house in Longview about a year and a half ago.
Congratulations on that.
It works for me.
Well, just think about how much extra in your pocketbook. I mean, drive across the bridge, and suddenly your income goes up 10% almost. Really.
There's reasons why a lot of people do that, and it's working for me. And I love Oregon, right? At the core of my being, I love Oregon. I've spent most of my life in Oregon. I mean, I worked at the Capitol for years and years and years trying to make this state better. I don't know. My impression is that Washington's just at least a little bit better run. The state kind of leaves me alone, doesn't take my money. I mean, I re-registered my tags the other day. I just went online, hit a couple of buttons, and...
We got the governor coming in next week, and I'm going to tell her that you think that Washington is better run. Just to let you know.
I know the governor. In fact, I've known...
I'll get my phone ready, Kitty.
I've met every governor to serve in my lifetime except for that Goldschmidt fellow that nobody likes to talk about anymore.
So let's hear about your musical background. And I want to talk about Chaos is Order, or Chaos Equals Order, is really the name of the song. And let's talk about your musical background. You said that you began playing music at a young age.
Yeah, and that was really it for me, was hearing Welcome to the Jungle for the first time and saying, this is amazing. I mean, I was, 8, 9 maybe? And music before then was just something in the background. We were driving around in Mom's minivan, but that was the first time anything ever grasped me. And I decided there and then, okay, I'm going to learn how to play the guitar, and I'm going to, be like these guys. Turns out that they were terrible influences. Right?
Did you take lessons of guitar?
I did. So my first guitar instructor, and this was in suburban Kansas City, my first guitar instructor was this totally straight-laced guy, and he was trying to teach me to read and write music. And he'd be like, okay, now let's play Michael Row the Boat Ashore. And it's like, well, but I want to learn how to play Guns N' Roses, right? He said, oh, you're into rock. Okay, well, here's the Beatles. Michelle. And I'd never heard that song in my life. It's really hard to play something if you've never heard it. So then we moved back to Southern California, and my guitar instructor was this guy with a poodle mullet. He was like, man, just bring in whatever you want to learn to play it. I'll show you how to play it. And that worked way better, right? So learning just basic rock technique and power chords. It's all about the power chords if you're playing basic rock. And, here's this Led Zeppelin song. Here's this AC/DC song. And so... by the time we moved to Grants Pass when I was 14, I was determined, right? I'm going to start a band. And I made some friends. Our first band was Suicide Squirrel.
That's an amazing name.
Suicide Squirrel. That could be another
Were you just
drink.
hanging out on the corner, like looking at the tree and saw a squirrel jump?
Actually, yeah, it was my late dad.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we were driving around, and that's what he saw was squirrels just dark. Well, in Longview, we have squirrel bridges,
Oh,
right?
that's
I mean, everybody
crazy.
should have squirrel bridges,
Yeah.
but they didn't in Grants Pass. Most places don't.
They should have.
And so it was basically, we're all like 15 years old at the time. A couple of them had been in bands, so they had some musical background. But it's basically these teenagers screaming profanity. But as I go back and listen to it all these years later, it's not as bad as I remember. I said, okay, there's a little something here. There's a little bit of talent.
Have you played in gigs, venues, things like that?
Oh, yeah. So, especially back then, because we were teenagers, and this was a couple of bands after Suicide Squirrel broke up, right? I mean, we're in Grants Pass, and they didn't really have much in the way of art and culture. You could have played a gig maybe at the Owl Club, which is like this biker bar where there's constant fights and violence.
Sounds like a hole in the wall. Perfect.
We couldn't even get in, right? Because we were underage, so we would have to rent out Grange halls. And we would just do it all ourselves in the total punk rock spirit of, we put up flyers all over the place to advertise the shows. We have, our girlfriends taking the money at the front door. We got some buddies doing security. Yeah, and exhausting. I mean, you do the setup yourself, you tear it all down yourself. But just to be able to do it. So then, eventually you turn 21, and by then, the band at that point was Drunken Public.
Okay. All right. That's
like band number 5 or so.
That's most bands, I think, isn't it? Or some for sure.
And we were playing in downtown Medford at the time, so by then, enough of us
So rebellious.
over 21.
Drunken Public in downtown Medford. What a shock.
Downtown
Never seen that before.
I know.
in downtown Medford at the time was pretty rough.
Yeah. Well, it still
compared to
is,
what
I
it
think,
is.
now.
It's so much better. You should have seen it back in 2000. I mean, it was, downtown was really bad. But, we had fun with it. So did that. Played shows in Ashland, all over the Southern Oregon area. With that band evolved to Useless Figures, and we were actually good. And I will say, out of all of the early ones, right, Useless Figures was the best. We were really hitting that next level, that next step. But then, life gets in the way, so half the band has to move. Like the drummer.
Now you said you have kids. Did you end up marrying a groupie? That's another question.
Was she a fan?
Yeah,
essentially, yeah.
See the plan.
Well, this is one of the big reasons that you do it in the first place, right?
Get the girls.
Absolutely.
Well, you said that was your plan from the
Remember when we
beginning.
had Danny Piano last week?
Right.
And he said that he wanted to learn so that he could pick up the chicks. So
then he should have played an instrument other than the piano.
Yeah.
The guitar works infinitely better for that.
We told him that usually the default is the guitar, but he had a similar story.
See?
But the singers usually do quite well in that regard. Drummers, I don't know. I think some drummers scare girls away.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there in the back hitting things.
Sweaty.
Yeah, exactly.
All the rage.
Yeah. The girls that like the bad boys go for the drummers.
Yes.
But no, it's been fun. And then, ended up in the Portland area years later, and I think it was 2011, formed the band Not Sure. And the third drummer we ended up with is the guy that I'm still playing with to this day.
Oh.
So this lineup started back in 2018 when one of my best friends who was in Useless Figures moved back to Portland. He had just gotten a divorce, right? He'd been miserably married up by Tacoma. And I said, here's what you need to do, right? Divorce her immediately. Sell your house. Come back down here, and let's start this band.
Yeah. Did he divorce her?
He did. He definitely did.
Does she know that you're the one that smashed her marriage apart? Is she coming to look for you now? That's the question.
Probably not all his fault.
No, but I won't refuse to take credit if it comes down to it. I'll swear on Pile Bible. So yes, indeed, I did tell him that. And he's probably glad he did.
So
he was so unhappy.
Has it always been punk?
Well, there's different hard rock influences involved, so...
Is this punk? I qualify Chaos Equals Order as punk.
Yeah, to me, punk is an attitude. It's a state of mind. But the stuff we're working on now, we're recording the second album with a different lineup. Basically what keeps happening is that my bass players keep leaving town, right? So that guy that was my best friend, he moves, still one of my best friends, right? So right after we released the album, and he was working in downtown Portland, so through the riots and through everything that was going on, and just dealing with people overdosing in the bathroom, right? He's like a retail manager.
Was this in Portland?
Yeah, this was in Portland, just right downtown.
Riots, people overdosing.
Yeah, just nastiness. And then one day he got assaulted at work, and he said, "You know what? I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore."
So now he lives in St. Helens?
Wenatchee.
Wenatchee.
He went to Wenatchee, and he's a whole lot happier, and I don't blame him. So then we had another buddy who had just moved back to town, and we started playing with him. But then similarly, these guys keep getting their cars broken into and you're the victim of crime so many times in Portland until you decide, okay, I'm done, and then he bailed. So we had to start all over again. My current bassist is actually a welding instructor over at PCC OMIC, Lucas, and he's a great guy. He's one of the absolute most upstanding human beings I've ever known. He was the bassist, in my band back in Grants Pass when we were renting out Grange halls. And really good bass player. I just about had to beg him to be involved, and I would have given any concessions, right? Because he's that good.
Okay, well, we're going to cut him in on our deal. Is he part of the band now?
Yeah. So, in fact, I'm hoping that he gets in to record some bass tracks. When they're on winter break over at PCC OMIC, right? We're still in touch. And I've got one of his bass guitar straps. So I said, well, fine, I'll get this back to you, but you have to hang out with me. Bribery.
So, the name of the band that produced Chaos Equals Order is what?
Robots Building Robots. And
what's the inspiration for that?
I think it's almost like a Skynet kind of thing, right? From Terminator. I didn't come up with it. I think our drummer did. But this idea that, man, when you get to the point where the robots are building robots, you're probably screwed.
Yeah.
And I think we're just about there.
I think so. The robots do build the robots quite a bit, and I love the name of the band, Robots Building Robots.
Yeah.
Especially for a punk band or a hard rock band. It's just I think it just sets the right tone.
For sure, one of a kind. I don't think anybody's used that before.
And in terms of the content and where it's going, I mean, like I said, we're recording the second album right now of the title "Symptoms of the Human Condition," and a lot of it's social commentary. You know, I started writing a whole ton of songs during and after the pandemic, and especially this year. This year I've been on a tear, very inspired by the hellscape that I see forming around me in all directions in the bigger picture of things. I think it's been a rough decade for humanity.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to have, I gotta say that it's been rough, and there have been some definite rough spots in the very near past, and I hope that we've learned some good lessons from them.
At the end of the day, I believe in people. You know, I believe in the decency of the average person. I believe in the ideals of this country and what it has stood for, and some of that involves freedom, right? Freedom with responsibility. And I feel that we're very, very close to losing it all forever.
Well, you want to stick around? You can hear what we're talk a little bit about freedom and losing freedoms on our news time, but that's coming up. But I do see there being a government trend, even locally, to taking freedom away from people, and the intent is to retain power in the people who are trying to run the show, and it really does take the people to say, we aren't going to tolerate this. In order to protect what you have, if you're too passive, you will have things taken from you, and you may not be able to get them back.
I mean, you pretty well just summed up what our next album says.
Really?
So, it's all about that. And then most of the songs I've written this year are going to be on the third album, which I just cut demos for the other day. So I've been very inspired, just kind of cranking out these songs. And the stuff we're working on now is more of a heavy metal influence, because that's what Lucas wanted. And like I said, I would have done anything. Just whatever you want, Lucas, right? Show up and play your bass and hang out with me, because you're a great guy.
Couple punk tunes in there. Come on. I mean, I like heavy metal, number one. I think it's great, but I just love the punk. I thought the punk edge on this Chaos Equals Order case was awesome. It was kind of heavy metal punkish.
Oh yeah, you'll love the third album. It has more of an old school Offspring type feel.
So what's the album? Where somebody wants to find your music? Can we find it online? Can we get it somewhere?
Yeah, it's out there. So the album is called Dysphoria, and it's on iTunes and it's on Spotify. And I'll have you know that to this day, 2 years after its release, I've received $12 in royalties.
Ooh,
wow.
Put that right back in.
And I did spend it all in the same place, downloading one of the new Red Hot Chili Peppers albums. But I think I've got like $2 outstanding. That once it reaches a critical mass, you can cash it in. But it'll be a while at this rate.
I expect that once Town Talk gets in the social media network and the web, we're going to catch on. This thing's going to be very big. Our Town Talk Cafe is going to be big and popular. So I think it's just a matter of driving more people to your content and content like it. And hopefully some big things will come out of this show, awareness and people listening to your music.
Well, like I said, man, I really appreciate being on here and being able to talk about these things. And you know, all these silly dreams you have when you're a kid. Like, one of the dreams, you know, back when we were renting out Grange Halls in Grants Pass was to play in downtown Portland, and we did that a couple of years ago, right after the album came out. Except downtown Portland isn't what it was back in 2000. And so you're literally like, oh, that's great. So there's homeless tents, and you're just grabbing your gear and carrying it past that, and there's some guy yelling down the street. You're like, okay, turn the T up just a little bit, right? The singer needs to be a little bit louder than that guy yelling.
Turn out the gunshots.
Yeah, or we could have invited him in to do background vocals. I don't know, but it was okay. We wanted to do this, and we did this, and kind of smashed. You know, guitars, like 3 guitars in Portland at various times, and a couple.
Was that spontaneous, or did you plan to do it?
Oh, I definitely plan to do it.
Okay.
I think you have to, right? You can't just, like, spontaneously, like, smash your favorite guitar.
Yeah, there goes my $800 guitar that I've been...
You're going to plan ahead, I think.
None of these were $800 guitars. Although, I think the second time I ever did it was on the campus of my alma mater, Southern Oregon University. Right? They had this nightclub thing that they were doing. And our set was this long, except I snapped a string. And so I'm sitting there going, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to, like, change the string just to play 2 more songs? What the hell with it? I just smashed it right there and then.
So when's the new album expected to be done?
I would hope early next year. So I just like, hey, Lucas, please get with our drummer. I recorded the guitar tracks months ago, right? So it's just a matter of the singer doing vocal tracks and, the bass tracks getting laid down. And, everyone has jobs and girlfriends and professions, so I get it.
Yeah, well, once the album is completed, do you have any objectives to tour? Like, you guys might play some local places, and where we could come see the band.
Maybe.
I hope so.
At this point in my life, like I said, I've got young kids, right? So I've got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I've spent enough time in my life doing the Portland bar scene, because it's really unglamorous at the end of the day, where you, the time that you have to go to your practice space, load everything up, go to the venue, because they want you there by a certain time, so you go unload your equipment, and then you sit around for hours, and then, right?
Yeah.
And then the other bands play,
in
and then you play, and then, you get 2 drink tickets for the whole thing, and I don't drink at this point.
Well,
yeah.
By the end of the show, you're all exhausted, and then you still have to break everything down and load it up.
Yeah, and then Portland's like an hour from here, right? From my place.
Well, let's do local. I'm trying to, we can get a little bit of a music scene. We've got, Salisbury and his band. They get
they definitely play around town a lot of different places.
Yeah, someone was telling me earlier about some pretty good venues in Longview, and he said, no, and they even start early. Because that's one of the things, right? I mean,
that is the thing.
I'm in my 40s. I'm usually up at, 7 o'clock every morning, so the thought of being up until 2:30, 3, it's just very, very unattractive to me.
Come playing St. Helens, the hard stop is 10 o'clock for sure.
Right.
No matter, I don't care if you're...
Actually, the town pretty much dies at 8 o'clock. Anything, like during the winter, anything after 8, it's just dead.
Taylor Swift would have to wrap up at 9. Because everybody be ready to go home.
Yeah.
To go to bed. So.
She's done well for herself. I don't understand. I don't understand the Taylor Swift hate, because here's this young girl who, she writes her own stuff, right? I don't care for her pop stuff. I don't care for her.
I liked her pop stuff. I don't like Frank. I like so much of her stuff, but go ahead.
But, when she started off, she was like a teenager, and I recognize genuine expression and talent when I see it. There's this young girl with a guitar and a voice, and, in terms of, is she a decent person? Well, who cares? I mean, she's not a horrible person as far as I can tell. Yeah, she's a good businesswoman.
Super smart.
But what you see is all these young girls from one end of the country to the other saying, Dad, I want to see her in concert, and I don't care that it's $1,000 a ticket, right? Because I have a lot of friends who have taken their daughters to it, who paid $1,000 a ticket happily somehow, and I mean, they seem to have a good time too, so.
She was brilliant by releasing her movie.
Yeah.
You don't have,
Didn't she get, like, Person of the Year or something?
Wow.
She did,
which still kind of confounds me a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
come on.
She starts showing
Time magazine.
She starts showing up at football games, and suddenly you've got all these people who've never watched football getting into football. I'm like, well, okay, I guess.
Oh, the NFL's very, very happy for her participation. But this isn't about Taylor. Come on, she's second string. We've got robots building robots here, and I want to make sure we stick to it. So let's. I kind of like the lyrics of this song, and we're going to be playing it more. But we come in peace, armed to the teeth, with legions of weapons intent on destruction. The war drums are pounding. The sound is so deafening when organized violence meets coerced compliance. I love that. Tell us about some of the inspiration for those lines.
So I wrote that about 10 years ago, and at the time it seemed like it was inevitable that the United States was going to get drawn into the civil war in Syria. And I think it's more relevant, if anything, today, because the geopolitical tension out there is, depending on who you ask, I think some folks would say that World War III has already started. And if it hasn't, then it's very, very, very close. It's not going to take much.
No, I'm more optimistic than that. I think people are not going to do that. That's my opinion.
I would hope so. I would hope so, because and that's just, at the end of the day, this is an anti-war song, and I'm a guy who grew up on military bases with a Marine Corps officer father during peacetime, growing up never seeing him all that much, and just imagining. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there younger than me who did multiple tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, and so I think we're kind of war weary anyway. And I would hope that that the public doesn't fall for it, right? But when I hear that all these different battleships from everybody's like heading to the same place in the Middle East, I say, well, that's great. So how long before something gets sunk, or someone runs into someone, or someone gets too close to someone else, and then it all just kind of sets everything off.
Human conflict is unfortunately too much of a reality of ourselves, and I don't know how we avoid it. It's great to avoid it, and it's good we have peace, but at the same time, our borders are all maintained, I think, by guns and sovereignty.
Oh yeah. Well, in peace, truth, strength, I believe, is a legitimate doctrine, and that's what I grew up with, under Reagan, as a child of the '80s, and I think your previous president had a similar policy, and I think that I don't think that the United States right now at this moment in time, and again, this is just me speaking as a private individual, I don't think we're in a position of strength, and so I don't think that that if it comes down to it. I don't think we're ready. I don't think.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question. I mean, I think there are a lot of issues that need to be examined nationally, and we fortunately have an election coming up, and it sounds like things are getting teed up to a really good discussion. I think I see things becoming a little more central. I think both sides are sort of tired of things being so skewed one side versus the other side, and we as Americans always seem to be able to meet in the middle to find the right solutions, and I think people are sort of craving a leader that can bring people to the middle. That's what my guess is. I'm hoping.
We always are. I think we always are.
So here's a question for you. There must be a better way. Chaos is the order of the day. Chaos is the order of the day. So where's that line come from? I mean, I dig it.
It's kind of that inherent contradiction, right? So, I mean, chaos is one side of the coin, order is the other. You kind of can't have one without the other. It's a yin and yang type scenario. So, I do a lot of wordplay with the lyrics. So, different devices, alliteration, internal rhymes, things like that. So, that's kind of what started it in the songwriting process, was that idea of, like, you're getting so used to chaos that chaos is all you see. That you're like, yeah, well, just, here you go.
Chaos is the order of the day, Kimmy. Chaos is the order of the day.
I know, totally.
Like you're just so used to things being awful that you're just like, oh well.
Well, I think that sometimes some things come out of chaos that are good. I'm not advocating for anarchy, but I am saying that some of the folks.
Sometimes there's organized chaos too.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Like in a restaurant industry.
Right. Like a strike is chaos.
Yep.
And so like when the workers rise up and say, we want more, we need this, and the people who are saying, we aren't going to provide it or whatever, then there's a strike, there's chaos.
Yeah.
And chaos then brings order. Chaos is the order of the day.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be seeing a little bit of that in St. Helens, believe it or not. I think we've got a very exciting 2024 coming up where our city's going to go through a transition in our Renaissance.
Our Renaissance.
That's right, in our Renaissance.
Transition, that was my first book.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was actually released a few months before I wrote this song.
So, I thank you very much, Scott, for allowing us to use this song on our venture into official news gathering organization.
So it'll play on every show, right?
It's going to be bumper music. Look, I'm not going to take it away. The guy said his dream.
That's like 5 days a week, too.
Right?
His dream came true. We made his year happen. And I think it's important to lead into news discussions, with something appropriate, like some raw punk tune. Chaos is the order of the day. And we can really sit down and talk about some stuff.
Yeah.
So Scott, what instrument do you play on that song? I know you say you play guitar. Are you playing the guitar on that song?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can play the other stuff too. I've played with enough drummers to where I can play the drums. The thing is that the best drummers can just sit there and play the drums without anybody else around them. And it's beautiful. It's poetic. You're like, wow, look at that guy go. I'm not that
Amazing.
guy, right? I'm just like, somebody pick something up and start playing it so I can play along. I get bored easy.
So, how old are your kids? Because we're in Town Talk. I got to learn a little bit more about you before you push off. How old are your kids?
So my oldest is a boy who lives in Wilsonville, and he's going to be 16 very soon. He's scheduled his driving test. I've got his car all ready for him. I just have to fix a couple more parts on it.
Nice.
And then my oldest daughter is 4, and they're actually musical too.
How
Your
fun.
son and your daughter, 16 and 4?
She is. He's more of a jock, actually. So
Uh-huh.
he plays football, he plays basketball, over there in Wilsonville. So probably a future state champ, because they have really good programs. In fact, their varsity football just won state. Their varsity basketball team defending state champions
That's
as well.
awesome.
Yeah, so, and he just started basketball season. His team last year was undefeated. So he's on a good track, and I'm really proud of him. He's a great kid. It's crazy because a few years ago, I was going to give him a bass guitar. And so I was like, here, buddy, try this on. And he starts playing it, and he was a natural, right? He was just crushing at this thing. But he wasn't into it. Like, it's just not
You
his
were
thing
into
at
it
all.
more than he was.
Right, yeah, I
Yeah.
recognize that. I've even got a picture of him. I mean, he knew what to do instinctively, right? He was just going to town.
Do you think he knew that from, like, either watching you play or...
Well,
Do
he
you think
used to
just
go to
being
band
around it?
practice. When he was
Yeah.
a little guy, I used to take him to band practice. So he's been
Yeah.
around it most of his life. And then we have a daughter who turns 2 on Christmas.
Oh, wow. So you've got some
What a
couple of young
Christmas
ones. No
present.
kidding.
Oh, and she's great. But yeah, even she has these inclinations. So my mother, before she passed, she had a storage unit in Grants Pass for years. And after she passed, I went through it, and so did some of her relatives. She had a keyboard in there forever, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
out there from 2007 to 2020 something. And I got the keyboard, plugged it in, and my oldest daughter immediately just,
Yeah.
So at home we've got the room where we're recording this album, the drum tracks and the guitar tracks for the second album, and it's like my man cave. So I've got TV hooked up so that I can watch football in there without being interrupted. The girls still
Yes.
come in anyway, which is
Of
fine.
course.
I'm not
Well,
gonna kick
women
them
like
out.
football too, and now that Taylor's interested, even more.
One does. My little one, right? The 1-year-old likes football. She's my little football buddy. But the 4-year-old is like, no, I don't like football. So, well, that's fine, but she'll still hang out, right? But no, they'll play the keyboard. So they'll go in there and like I've got the drum set all set up and the guitar and everything, but they'll start going to town on the keyboard.
Well,
That's pretty
Beethoven, what, age 6, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? I mean, you cannot start kids too young on music.
Yeah.
And as far as your son is concerned, he was playing football, so, maybe didn't
gonna
need the
freak fast.
guitar,
Well, he's had the
Yeah.
same girlfriend for 2 years and she's a model.
Yeah,
So, I
exactly.
mean,
Wow,
he's,
that's consistent.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's doing just fine.
Football's
Yeah.
got me, I'm wired in on football. I don't need to play the guitar. I got a model girlfriend
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, he gets it.
You don't need to
It's
play the music to get the girl. You already got it.
Uh-huh.
So,
I was too scrawny to play football. I mean, he has my same build, but he's fast, and he understands the game in ways that I never will. I mean, I'm a lifelong football fan, right? But he and I will watch a game together, and he's like, oh, check it out. The offense is going to do this play, and they're doing this because of this, and the defense is doing this. It's like, really? I don't know. Like, hand that guy the ball and see if he can run it. Like, there's so much more strategy involved that I don't get. But
Yeah.
So I know we haven't talked about your other things, but as Scott, you do survive on things other than $12 from your music sales, but we're gonna keep your real life a secret. You do work on the Oregon side of the river, right?
Oh, I mean, I'm actually, I think, on my 3rd career. And I've been an author, too, right? So 4 books have published about Oregon history and politics. So I started off as a journalist. Originally, my career ambition as a high school student down in Grants Pass was to, write for Rolling Stone. So I wrote for the school paper and did record reviews and things like that. But then I got a subscription to Rolling Stone, and I was like, God, this is terrible. It's not any better now. So I just took that right off the table. And then one of my professors, who I'm still in touch with, was pretty honest about freelance reporting and that it's a fast track to starving. And I never wanted to starve. I'm not into that. So I started doing hard news, right? Covering city council meetings, and I was just fascinated by it. My father had actually been on a municipal advisory committee when I was younger, so that influenced me in ways I didn't even think it would at the time. But just had kind of this inherent understanding of it, and covered city government something like half a dozen different jurisdictions, saw what worked and what didn't, different approaches that people took. I've seen city councils that were harmonious, city councils that were a catastrophe, and everything in between. Ended up parlaying those contacts into a stint at the Oregon State Capitol. So I've worked in the legislature for, a total of 5.5 years in the House and in the Senate. Boy, and that was inspiring. I was there when John Kitzhaber resigned as governor. And so that was the subject of one of my books called On the Cusp of Chaos.
Whoa.
So
okay.
came out in 2015.
I want to read that
That's
book.
good.
So where do we get that book if we want to get it?
That's on Amazon.
All right. So let me ask you this question. So do you think, so as a person who's a journalist and who has been very involved, it sounds like, in government, do you think that news people covering local government is an important thing?
The time that I've been in my third career, right, after grad school, running local government agencies, I've actually been kind of disappointed because newsrooms have been hollowed out everywhere. Local news is so important, so critical, and I always try to have constructive relationships with local reporters, being a good source for them, right?
Well, I'm one.
Yeah,
now.
Most of the time that I've been doing it, I've been able to just dash off press releases, right, and send it to them and have it printed verbatim. Now I can write in AP style, right? But it's good. It's been good to me that I can do that. But part of me's going, really? I mean, maybe use this information as the basis of something and interview a couple of other people and maybe come to a meeting every once in a while. I mean, we broadcast our meetings, right? So you don't even have to actually show up. You can sit at home, and some of the good reporters do. I've worked with some pretty good reporters in that, but no, like I said, I'm kind of disappointed that there's not more of that kind of coverage. And some of the reporters I work with are good. They're talented. I'd say they remind me of a younger version of myself, but I think that'd be kind of an insult.
Do you think the public, though, what is it that, you got to sell the newspaper. If you're writing about politics all the time or what's going on with the city government, maybe they have a hard time selling newspapers or people don't tune in. I mean, the public's interest drives the commercial side. Do you see the public not being interested in what's going on with the government?
I think it kind of feeds itself because a lot of media outlets have lost credibility over the years because if you're so biased to the point where, what do you get a local newspaper for? What do you do? What do you listen to local radio for? Things that you won't get anywhere else, right? I mean, it's really easy to get the national stuff. You can get that anywhere. But, for example, Marty was telling me before this broadcast that he's going to go cover a local basketball game after this. That's gold. Right?
Awesome.
A corporate radio station, I guarantee you would never do that.
I subscribe to both the Chronicle and the Spotlight, by the way, just because I do believe in supporting the local journalism, and it's great getting the local stuff to your door. And I know a couple of the reporters there, Will Lohr for the Chronicle.
Will's been great to work with.
And Scott Keith, both really good reporters.
Yeah.
And the only way we keep these businesses alive is by buying their stuff, and it's not that expensive.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, so I graduated in 2003 from SOU with a major in journalism, and I almost went into the military as an officer. I should have done that. I'd have my 20-year pension, like, right now. Right?
Well, I don't know.
Right
you
now.
Could be who knows where. I mean,
yeah,
don't wish for a change of your past. You have 3 beautiful children and a beautiful wife, and you've got a great music career going on.
I've had a good run, yeah. But the first, I think you'll appreciate this. My first job out of college was at a daily newspaper in Central California in Turlock, right?
Yeah.
And
I know Turlock.
Part of me thinks that was a big mistake. But in hindsight, my job was city government reporter. So I literally was learning the ins and outs of city government, which is, what I do now every day. So it was invaluable.
Careful, you're squeaking out your real life. I'm trying not to let anybody know what you really do.
My not-so-secret identity. But the parent company was bankrupt, right? So 6 months in, my lease is up, and I learned that the company's selling off its assets to, like, the same company that owned our rival publication. And I said, well, this is stupid. I'm going to do something else now. So just about every newspaper that I wrote for sold or went out of business. And when you're in your early 20s and you're single, that's fine, I guess. But then you start to have a family and you say, am I really going to have to do this? I mean, some people give me a bad time for job hopping. I said, well, that's easy for you to say, man. I got into this business at the wrong time. I think being a reporter back in the Woodward and Bernstein days probably would have been great. You see all these movies, these depictions back then of bustling newsrooms, right? That doesn't happen anymore. I literally was the newsroom. I was one guy sitting there in places like Estacada, sitting there by myself.
So what advice do you give me as a 60-something-year-old semi-retired person deciding now I'm going to get in, do some gathering of news and reporting of news? With local news, by the way. I'm not doing anything nationally. Just local. In fact, St. Helens. What's going on in St. Helens? You know, the light was flashing yellow for 5 minutes at the intersection.
There was a dog that we were trying to catch by the train.
Jimmy Smith lost his dog. But what advice do you have?
I would say check the agendas for the County Board of Commissioners. Cultivation of sources is important, so having a good rapport with local officials I think is important. And like I said, I mean, there's been times where we've had things on the agenda where I was like, oh man, I bet for sure there's going to be a reporter here. And no, there's not. They even had reporters, a reporter be in the room during the meeting and then leave before an executive session. I just about went out and stopped her and said, what are you doing? I used to love executive sessions. That's one of the few privileges of being a reporter. It's not the pay. And I think that's one of the big problems all along. And all the reporters you mentioned, Will especially, he does a great job. I did not get rich reporting, believe it or not.
So let's do this. I do want to segue into our news segment, and I'd love to have you stick around, but we're going to talk a little bit about some City of St. Helens stuff. You want to stick around? We can riff the news, or are you going to take off? What are you going to do?
I have no dog in that fight.
Okay, stick around. So let's go from the top. Chaos is the order. Let's just go to there we go. That's right.
Hey, thanks for having me.
That's right. Dreaming come true with bumper music that's right. Bumper music. Yep. So here we go, Kimmy.
Okay.
We're going to have a little shorter version in the future. But there's our bumper music, and we're going to go right into Chaos is the Order. So first thing I want to ask you, Kimmy, when we get started on our new segment, have you ever heard of the Constitution of the United States of America?
In fact, I have.
Isn't that amazing? We all learned that in school, and let's talk about some of the freedoms that were put in the Constitution, one of which is the freedom of the press.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big reason for that, because the government did not like the idea that a person back in that day, would have a printing press, literally, putting paper, press it, print another one. But they wanted to control speech and what was said, and they wanted to arrest people for disseminating ideas that they didn't like. And that is why freedom of the press is there. It's so that people can broadcast what's going on, so the public can understand it or hear about it. And they can put point of views out there. And so in our country, back in the day, before our Constitution was written, putting something that the government didn't like, which is the king, out there could get you hung, could get you jailed.
Yeah.
And how many people do you think you have to hang or jail before all the other people say, "Ooh, you know what?
Right.
Look what happened to Steve." God, he said he didn't like he didn't like the color of somebody's shoes, and he still hasn't come out of the gulag. I mean, so and so then they combine that concept with freedom of speech concept, which is the human expression of whatever's going on and freedom. And what our founding fathers put in our Declaration of Independence and the preamble of the Constitution, these are things that are basic to humanity.
Mm-hmm.
We as human beings have a desire to be free. And so I wanted to make sure that I was participating in that for our community and being a member of the press for the city of St. Helens and for my radio show, Town Talk Cafe. And so that's why I said, we're going to do some local news, we're going to do some local events, and I announced it. So
I like that.
yeah. So I'm going to gather some news.
Okay.
I'm going to be a news gatherer.
That's exciting.
I'm gathering news constantly when I'm out there.
I know. You always do that anyways. You got to know what's going on.
We walk in the room and there's news before you.
You do always ask lots of questions, though.
It's a habit forming.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 35 years, so what can you do?
That's true.
And then, and I thought, well, why not report on it? And now that I've got a radio show, so I have freedom of the press and freedom of the speech working for me. And so I do want to kind of talk about some of the local city news. We're going to start off with the city's budget crisis. And the very first thing that I want to say, to all of the city workers, at the city of St. Helens, is I'm very, very troubled on a personal level. I want our people to know that our city workers have gotten a letter that they may be facing layoffs or furloughs in the very near future due to
just recently?
Yes, they got this thing within the last week.
What a horrible timing, too, right before Christmas.
Yeah, and it makes you think if the budget crisis must be such that they felt like they had to give people news before the holidays.
Yeah, that's kind of...
And isn't the news that one might lose their job something on the top list of like 3 things that are the most stressful things that a person could have in their life?
Yeah.
Because it's like the death of...
Well, that's any kind of stability you have, any kind of like, just the consistency of having an income, and having a break in that is detrimental to a lot of people that live around here.
Am I going to have to move? Where my kids can go to school? How am I going to get my health care?
Well, like the median income level has gone up so high to where, you can barely afford to move or pay rent. A lot of people struggle with that already, so just to add that on top of that.
So I want to start the conversation by saying personally to our city workers that I feel very badly for you. I think that anybody who is dealing with city workers on a professional basis need to understand that they're all going through a very tough time right now. And
you never know what someone's going through.
That's right. And here we are in this great economy where really I've been trying to get people to work for me. It's hard to find people to work, and a lot of people say that, I'm looking for people. So we have an economy that's roaring. A lot of businesses are hiring. A lot of businesses are having a hard time finding people. So that's the good news, I guess, for the city people who might get laid off, that there's jobs out there. But
that's a tough one, though, because a lot of people are having problems finding another job. And it's because, a lot of businesses have a lot fewer employees now. 5 years ago,
right,
businesses were running with twice as many people that they do now. So the ones that they do have to run at a higher capacity than they did previously.
Where are you going to get a job? Maybe you have to move.
Fewer employees, more responsibilities.
You're thinking about picking up your kids and bringing them to another school?
Yeah.
You're looking at maybe health care benefits. Your spouse is then saying, I like my job here. I don't want to move. And so this is what the people who really do a fine job for us. And I work with the city extensively, and I can tell you they all do their very best at the job they're doing. And, each and every one of them works conscientiously for us, the citizens. And so when we're starting off in this conversation, I want to make sure that the city workers know that our hearts go out to them.
Yeah.
And that we're going to try and find a solution. Okay.
That's good.
Well, and part of the thing is that how did we get here? I mean, that's the question. And our budget director reported, and this comes back to my news gathering, she reported that one of our reserve accounts, the general fund, was about $500,000 short of what she thought what she reported it would be.
She reported it what number?
Right.
And it was $500,000 short.
Correct. And I think that's because the city's finances are, I don't know the answer to that question, but I think we're starting to learn that potentially it's because the finances are in disarray. This is not a mistake that she made. It is the information that she was given to report the budget it was not accurate.
Obviously, yeah.
And she's not saying, oh, I made a mistake.
No, yeah.
There's really...
It's the information that was given to her.
Right. And so, the mayor's reaction was only $500,000. And I'm going to get a little clip. We're going to play that next week because we're going to kind of hit some of these things next week. We're going to hear our mayor say only $500,000 is missing from the account. I want people to hear that. See, that's going to be part of our news gathering and news bringing forward is what are the reaction of our government officials?
What's the reaction of the people that are about to lose their job because there's not enough money to keep them hired in the city?
I can tell you I've talked to them, and some of them, they're very worried. They're anxious. They are concerned. Nobody knows whether they will continue to have a job. Mm-hmm. And the problem is they don't see leadership as competent to solve the problems. And that is one of the concerns. So I think that's something to get out there, and we're about, we've got a couple more minutes left. We stuck a long time with Scott and robots building robots, but next week we're going to have a lot to talk about on the news. So that's number one. So I think in this Christmas time, be patient with our city workers. Take a deep breath. Understand they're going through a lot. And help them as much as you can. I think kindness and patience are two things that we could all exercise.
They go a long way.
Definitely. And I think just letting them know that you are aware that this is a situation that they have and that you're going to be looking into it and be following how our city's resolving this. Mm-hmm. We're talking about government engagement and local news, right? Mm-hmm. Well, and so, one of the issues we're going to talk about is, the city saying, hey, I don't necessarily want Steve Toski to show up as a news person in our executive sessions.
Uh-oh, Steve.
I know. They don't.
What are you doing?
Well,
you ruffling a couple feathers?
I can tell you, I'm just pointing out what the reality is. See, I live in the real world, Kimmy.
Yeah.
So do you, right?
I should hope so.
Is it bad? I'm ruffling feathers is simply pointing out.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Well, I'm not trying to. I simply am pointing out.
Well, if you're asking questions and it's ruffling feathers, it all just kind of happens that way. But maybe it's, they haven't been asked those tough questions before.
Freedom of the press and freedom of speech. And when the government gets desperate, those are the things that it tries to take away. Because they don't want people to know. That's right. Not me. Everybody. See, the point of silencing one person is to teach everybody else. This is what happens
Good example.
This is an example. Most people, they don't want to get out there. Most people and they see somebody else, oh, look at that guy, he's doing so good. Oh, my God, he just got crushed. Oh, okay.
What a way to end the show.
I know. All right, so stay tuned. We'll be back in 1 week. And come on in for the chaos
cocktail.
The chaos cocktails. More next week on Town Talk Cafe.
You've been listening to St. Helens Town Talk Cafe with Steve Toski. You can email your comments on the show to Steve in care of kohi.radio@gmail.com. And be sure to listen again next time for another St. Helens Town Talk Cafe radio show on KOHI.